computer. We had 3 people try to join the Zoom. And now, nobody's here. Well, tonight we're going to be speaking, I'm going to be speaking, well, we're going to be speaking together at some point, the discussion questions. But we're going to be looking at John 6, 1 through 5. As you are all aware, we have been going through the book of John, and Praise Assembly has been too. So if you really want to dig deeper into the book, you can check out their YouTube channel because they have the past sermons and stuff on there. Also, if you're curious about what we spoke about on Tuesday nights at Koinonia, it's also on the Praise Assembly YouTube channel. We're streaming these to YouTube, so if you want to catch up. I think there's 1 week we missed, but so let's open up our Bibles to John chapter 6. Last week, Morgan spoke about the healing at the pool in the beginning of John chapter 5. Now we're going to move on to the feeding of the 5,000. So I'm just going to start by reading this, and then we'll kind of go through it a little bit. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Seems like Jesus does that a lot. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." Another one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There's plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left, let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. There's a fly on my shoe. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." Jesus, knowing they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. So I'm going to pray real quick before I keep going. So, dear Lord, I pray that in these next few minutes, as we are just reading your word and the stories that you did here on earth, that we may get some personal application from it, that we can glorify you with how we think and act after tonight. Lord, help us process your words and be with me as I speak. In your name, amen. I don't like speaking into the microphone. It feels so official. All right, so a little background on why this is taking place. Jesus, so we can get a better picture of what's going on here by looking at the different gospel accounts. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, this event took place in all 4 gospels. This is the one and only event, miracle, that was formed, or that happened, that is written in all 4 gospel accounts, apart from the resurrection. But like the things Jesus did on earth, and that fly's really it's huge. Ew, now it's smushed all over my notes. Okay. If anybody wants to see, that's what that looks like. Okay. So this is the one and only miracle that is in all four Gospels, which means that it's probably pretty significant, and the disciples really wanted you all to know about it. So we read in Mark 6 a little more background about what's going on. So in verse 30 it says, "The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, 'Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest.'" So before the feeding of the 5,000 took place, they were on the other side of the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus goes, okay, so Jesus sent his disciples out to go teach, to go tell them about himself and everything going on, and then they come back to him and they report to him what's going on, and the crowds are growing, Jesus is gaining popularity, and he's like, let's go and retreat. Let's get in the boat, go across. And we also read in another gospel account, I think it's Matthew and Luke, where it's talk about John the Baptist. Jesus also gets the news that John the Baptist died. And so all of this is happening, all this chaos is happening, and Jesus is like, let's go and retreat a little bit. So, so why the big crowds? Why are all of these people here? Well, as I said, his disciples had gone out to spread the news. The word was traveling, and what's special about John's account here of this story, it says in verse 4 that it says, the Passover festival was near. Now, Morgan had talked about this at the healing of the pool, that people would come and during this time of year, and so people from all over the place were coming to this area. And so not only is there the special news of Jesus being around, but so the crowds were huge. Everybody wanted to see what was happening. Now, the magnitude of this event. We talked a little bit about the background, why it's taking place, but what about the magnitude? So when we think about the miracles Jesus performed, like, this is the biggest one. Like, it says here that 5,000 men were there, but that's not including the women and children that were there. They counted the households, the men, and so there could be like up to like 20, 25,000, like estimates between like 15 and 20,000 people were there and witnessed this happening. So people were in, also, like, so that it says that 5,000 men were fed, which means people were coming and going all day long. Jesus was healing, Jesus was teaching, and so if you take all those numbers into account, it's pretty crazy, the crowd that size. And all the people in that crowd were trying to experience this one man, Jesus, and what he was about. Talk about paparazzi. Just imagine all the chaos. Now, the process, the feeding, think about the organization that would have to take. In a different account, we hear that Jesus told them to sit down. Right here it just says Jesus told them to sit, have the people sit down. But in Mark it says 50 to 100 people. So to organize this, Jesus said, let's sit down in groups. So there are probably like 250 groups in the grassy fields. And so I don't know if you've ever been in like a high school class where a teacher's trying to wrangle a bunch of students and tell them to be quiet and sit down, or like organizing a large group without a microphone seems pretty crazy. In high school, I was the head of the media committee, and we did this thing each year called the lip dub. And I had to organize the students and the staff to line up in a line across the school, and it was a one-take video where we'd go through like a tunnel of people to a song. And so each different clubs were apart in different, so people didn't just line up in one line, but it was divided by different clubs, so like drama, theater, all of these people would be lining up. I thought I did the best I could do organizing these people. I mean, I went to a school of 2,000 people, but probably only like close to maybe like 900, 1,000 maybe took part in this. And so I'm trying to organize all these people, and I thought I did the best I could do. I lined up blue tape throughout the school, and that was out. The blue tape was out on the grounds for over a week so people could look at the map. I put numbers. I taped numbers down onto the floors, and I put keys, and I put all of the club peoples, assigned them a number. I hosted these events where people, the meetings, club meetings, so the heads of each organization would come to this meeting, and I'd relay all of the information they needed to know, and then they would then give it to their club. I did all of this prep. I even did a video announcement a week before, like explaining detailed, like this is what you need to act like, these are the things you need to do. And of course, nobody was listening. The day that it happened, I remember being so frustrated. I'm like, I was running along the pathway, and I'm like, fill in all the gaps. We can't have any gaps. And nobody was listening. And so if you look back at the video, it looks pretty pathetic. I'll share it with you sometime. But just think about the chaos of this event, 15,000 people. My point in saying all of this story is that have you ever asked the question in this story, is why did Jesus feed everyone? I think about trying to send a message to everyone. Think about this scenario as like trying to send a message to everyone. And not only does it not reach everybody in the crowd, but like everybody in the crowd hears this message and has their own thoughts and disagreements about the message being portrayed. And so something had to happen. Jesus decided to do something for everyone there who was willing to participate. It says, there was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. Verse 10. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed it to those who were seated as much as they wanted. So everybody was seated. They could have left and said, I don't want to wait to distribute this food. It's 5 pieces of bread. So anybody who's willing to participate, God wanted to show himself to them. So what implications does this have for us? The biggest implication I can think of is the validity of Jesus working, his miracle working abilities. So there was at least 15,000 people who personally experienced Christ. What's special about John's account here is that he adds something important to the end of the story that all the other Gospels leave out. Because John's focus throughout this entire book is about God's divinity. Or Jesus' divinity. So in verse 14, it says, after the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they begin to say, surely this is the prophet who has come into the world. If you ever wondered how Christianity spread so quickly in an age without telephones or electronics, just think about 20,000 people experience this event, or 20,000 people contracting COVID-19 and then going back to their homes and spreading it to the people there. So the next implication that we cannot forego spending time with our Heavenly Father, even if urgent matters arise. So, Jesus did what he went there to do. Like I said, he started in the beginning. He said, let's retreat for some quietness. They go across the boat, but then all of the crowds were there. Jesus did what he needed to do. It just took a little bit longer. After the feeding, he told his disciples to go out onto the boat while he went off up into the hills, mountains, to pray alone. So if you continue reading, that evening came, and his disciples went down to the lake, where they got into the boat and set off across the lake. By now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. So Jesus actually took the time after this crazy chaos to go off on his own, take some time, relaxation, spend some time with God. I can't imagine how tired he was after a day of dealing with all of those people. And within taking care of those urgent matters, these lost sheep, as one of the accounts calls them, Jesus comes into the scene and sees all of these lost sheep, and he wants to be the shepherd. So within taking care of that, he wasn't just taking care of it because it was in front of him, but because he had compassion, and because he did it for the right reasons. He did it to glorify himself, like to show his divinity. So the last implication I have tonight is just how Jesus handled the situation. He would have been so tired after a long day of teaching and healing and crowd surfing. Like to think he crowd surfed, probably didn't. The disciples wanted to send the people back to their own town. They wanted to send the people back, like, hey, go get some food. Let them go back to town and grab dinner. There's no food here. But Jesus instead calls his disciples to then and feed the lost sheep and to tend to them. The disciples probably wanted to rest as well at the end. He's like, Jesus, I think we should probably shut this down. Like, people need to eat. And Jesus like, I'll feed them. He wanted to reach every single person. And when life gets overwhelming, do you tend to push the needy away, or you tend to care for them? Like, everybody in that crowd was wanting to experience God. And he made it possible by reaching all of them with the bread and the fish. So, to recap, 1, Jesus' miracles are valid. Number 2, reflection, rest, and retreating is necessary. And number 3, we want to work towards a compassion similar to Christ. So I have some discussion questions, and I think we're going to break into 2 small groups. So someone want to huddle around Garrett, and somebody want to huddle around Richard. Distance as well as you can. Wear your mask if you're not far away from people. And you don't live with them, because there's a lot of people who live with each other here. Yeah, so here are the discussion questions. So, what do you go to or turn to when things get overwhelming? In what ways do you need to go out of your way to meet with God? How do you balance your compassion for others and your compassion for yourself? Do you tend to have more compassion for yourself or compassion for others? So you can think about that. And you can wrap it up with prayer too at the end.